shortly. I extend my warm welcome to all to this webinar. We know earlier our doctors are depends on the symptoms to arrive at conclusion of the diagnosing of diseases or medical issues, and gradually they started using some gadgets. Earlier they sense only with the pulse of the human being. Based on that, that people are deciding the actually what is a disorder in the diagnosing of diseases. Shall I continue? And gradually they started using some gadgets. Earlier they sense only with the pulse of the human. Based on that, the people are deciding what is a disorder. Continue. Hello. Please just tell me whether
there is some problem with the net connectivity. No? Yeah.
Actually, Sudeep sir's audio is on. That's why the echo is coming.
Okay. Am I audible, madam? Ma'am, am I audible?
So there is a delay.
Oh.
I have muted myself. I have muted myself.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible to us here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'll continue. So earlier, the doctors are depends only on the pulse of people. Most of the cases they are recognizing with that, and slowly we added a lot of gadgets in this form of stethoscope, etc. Now, as the application of computer comes in every walk of life and every field of technology, the computer also comes to doctors to diagnose and precising this their quality of decision making. So that area today we are discussing. Our learned speaker, Dr. Parvati S. Pillai, definitely will explain to us. So we can get a very good presentation on this subject. She is speaking from United States, and my duty is to extend welcome to the all the participants. Let me welcome in advance Dr. Thakreji, Chairman of IEA India, Institute of Engineers India. I hope he'll agree to proceed this function. He will join shortly, I hope. Next is our chairman of Computer Engineering Division Board, Engineer Amit Kumar Das ji. I extend my warm welcome on behalf of Kochi Local Center as well as on behalf of me to this webinar. Next is, I expect Dr. G. Ranganath, CATTE chairman. Hope he will join shortly to us, and he agreed to give a felicitation to this program. I hope you will join shortly to this webinar. I extend my warm welcome to him, and on behalf of me as well as on behalf of Kochi Local Center. Next is our most important dignitary of the today's function, Dr. Parvati S. Pillai. She is kind enough to agree and join with us to deliver a most modern subject, that is machine learning and artificial intelligence in the medical field. A very important thing. That is the most advanced system right now available in the medical field, investigation purpose, as well as for the other medical systems. Now we know that it is not necessary to go to doctor's office directly. We can, our own place, we can get treated through this gadgets and mechanism that we know, we are experiencing it. And that wonders behind that, I am hope she will explain to us and what extent we can understand it. That is a big question because it is a very vast subject. I hope she will definitely simply give a lecture, I mean, with simplified form to understand all the common people. I extend my warm welcome, madam, to this webinar. I extend my welcome to on behalf of me as well as on behalf of my local center to this webinars, ma'am. Next is our beloved Professor Dr. Madhu sir. It's an inspiring personality for us, for all activities. And of course, he is the backbone of our all technical activities as well as for almost a guide for all the activities of the IEA and well-being of IEA based on his advice, along with his advice, as well as the activities of other committee members. As being a prominent committee member and prominent well-wisher and warm welcome to Dr. Madhu sir on behalf of me. Plus, next is our along with the all activities. So warm welcome to Engineer K. Babu sir. Next is the officials from headquarters, Sudeep Chakravarti ji, on our other members, those who are participating here. I extend my warm welcome to all to this webinar. And at last, I extend my those who are joined with us. Now it is 51 altogether. Then I extend warm welcome to all the participants, those who are joined with us right now, including our senior colleagues, senior members, as well as our committee members, then our council members. I'm unable to see the list, unfortunately, right now. Anyway, I hope all people are available. I extend my warm welcome to all the people available with a good gesture. Then I extend welcome to all the people those who have participated here. I'm not extending much, and finally, I can hope that there is a good presentation we can enjoy, and we will learn a lot of good things. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Over to Madhu sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to all the dignitaries and participants from India, and good morning to the distinguished panelists participating from the United States of America. At the very outset, let me extend a warm welcome to all of you. Today we have gathered here for the technical webinar on applications of machine learning and artificial intelligence in medicine, organized by the Institution of Engineers India, Kochi Local Center, under the aegis of the Computer Engineering Division Board of IEI. Our chairman has already welcomed the dignitaries. I hope that they will join us soon. The Honorable President, then Dr. Hemant Thakreji, then Chairman of the Computer Engineering Division, Mr. Amit Kumar Das, Chairman of CARTE, Dr. G. Renganath. They are all expected to join us. I think another webinar is in progress. I think the chairman, the president, national president is attending that webinar. Hopefully he will join us soon. Now, coming to the topic of this webinar, as all of us know, man has always been fascinated by the mysterious nature of his brain. So we know that the brain is so complex that the human beings, they have not been able to understand it fully, even today. Many scientists say that we have understood only about 20% of the complexity of the brain. So the human brain has advanced over time in responding to survival instincts, all these during the last millions of years, harnessing intellectual curiosity and managing demands of nature. When humans got an inkling about the dynamics of the environment, we began our quest to replicate nature. That's how the human race progressed. While the human brain finds ways to exceed our physical capabilities, the combination of mathematics, algorithms, computational methods, and statistical models, they are accelerating our scientific pursuit. Artificial intelligence gathered momentum after the legendary Alan Turing. He is known as the father of machine learning and artificial intelligence. He developed a mathematical model for biological morphogenesis and authored a seminal paper on computing intelligence way back in the 1950s. Today, artificial intelligence has grown from data models for problem solving to artificial neural networks, a computational model based on the structure and functions of human biological networks. An intelligent computer. Now we talk about intelligent computers. An intelligent computer uses AI to think like a human. That is the dream of any computer science, to think, to make a computer think like a human and perform tasks on its own. Machine learning is how a computer system develops its intelligence. One way to train a computer to mimic human reasoning is to use a neural network, which is a series of algorithms that are modeled after the human brain. The complexity and rise of data in healthcare, that's how the application of machine learning and AI came to medicine. So a lot of the complexity and the rise of data in healthcare means that artificial intelligence will increasingly be applied within this field. Several types of AI are already being employed by providers of care and life sciences companies. The key categories of applications include diagnosis and treatment recommendations, patient engagement and adherence, and administrative activities. So I sincerely hope that the distinguished panelist of this webinar, Dr. Parvati S. Pillai of Mayo Clinic, Rochester, Minnesota, will enlighten us on the various applications of AI and ML in medicine. So this is, so with this introduction, I think, shall I introduce the speaker? Should we wait for the our dignitaries to join?
The chairman of the division board will be joining in 5 to 10 minutes.
5 to 10.
In the meantime, sir, the speaker may start because audience.
Yeah, yes, we need to anyway. Yeah. In between, we can take a break and
Yes,
give the keynote address. Okay,
Right.
thank you. So I will give a brief introduction about our panelist. Dr. Parvati S. Pillai, as I have already told you, she has been working as a research fellow at Mayo Clinic, Rochester, Minnesota, since 2019. She originally belongs to Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala. Dr. Parvati had a brilliant academic career. She obtained her BTech degree in computer science and engineering from Amrita Vishwavidyapitham, Coimbatore, and MTech degree in computer science and engineering from International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore. She is a strong research professional with a Doctor of Philosophy, PhD degree in computer science from the very prestigious National University of Singapore. She is skilled in medical informatics, machine learning, distributed computing, and data structures. She is an experienced teaching assistant with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education sector. Dr. Parvati has more than a dozen publications in reputed journals and conference proceedings to her credit. So with this brief introduction, let me invite Dr. Parvati S. Pillai to deliver the talk on applications of AI and ML in medicine. Over to Dr. Parvati. Thank you.
Thank you for the very warm introduction. So let me just begin by sharing my screen. If the panel could confirm that my presentation is visible, I can start.
Yes. Yeah.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Parvati Pillai, and I work as a postdoctoral research fellow at Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. My research focuses on the development and application of artificial intelligence, or AI, in radiological images like computed tomography or CT, magnetic resonance images or MRI, and so on, to help clinicians and doctors make informed decisions in patient care. So before I begin my talk today, I want to thank the Institute of Engineers India, especially the Kochi Local Center, for this opportunity to present in front of an esteemed panel, an audience of established engineers and engineering students. It is a great honor, and I'm glad that I was considered to give this talk today. So today's tech talk is on the topic of applications of AI in medicine. So I want to put a disclaimer up front that I'm by no means an expert in the field, and all the content presented in the talk today is based on published research. So the motivation for today's talk comes from the buzz that surrounds us about AI. We hear how often, if not every day, AI is changing your career, home environment, entertainment, travel, and whatnot. Especially, healthcare is the hottest area for AI investments, attracting investments to the tune of $7.3 billion over the past 6 years. The global AI healthcare market size was valued at $10.4 billion in 2021 and is expected to expand at a compounded annual growth rate of 38.4% from 2022 to 2030. A similar trend can be observed in the growing list of publications on the subject in the form of academic articles, health policy reports, statements, and from professional societies and popular media coverage. AI can play an important role in the development of personalized medicines at all relevant phases of clinical development and implementation of new personalized health products, from finding appropriate intervention targets to testing them for their utility. So now that I've introduced the scenario around AI in healthcare, I want to skim through the following in today's talk. First, we'll go for a general understanding of AI. Then I'll present a few examples of the application of AI in medicine, the challenges in implementing AI, and what is the future hold for AI. So what is AI? AI is the ability to process external data systematically and learn from it to achieve specific goals and tasks. So generally speaking, AI implies the use of a computer to model intelligent behavior with minimal human intervention. Though the hype around AI is recent, it has been in existence for quite some time. To be specific, from 1943, when the first artificial neuron was described by McCullough and Pitts. It consists of a set of inputs, the neuron, and their corresponding importances or weights, and a threshold function. So there are different types of inputs, like excitatory inputs, which have weights of positive magnitude, and inhibitory inputs, which have weights of negative magnitude. So the input of McCullough-Pitts neuron were binary, that is 0 or 1, and it has a threshold function as an activation function. So the output signal here in the slide, Y out, is 1 if the input reaches a threshold, reaches a specific threshold value. So it was in 1958 that Rosenblatt built a machine called a perceptron around the McCullough-Pitts neural model. And however, perceptron includes an additional weight here called W0, which we call as a bias term. And the objective of the perceptron was to classify a set of inputs into two classes, say C1 and C2. So it could be used to identify numbers and digits, letters from images. It uses a very simple decision rule, like assign a specific input to class 1 if the output of the perceptron is positive, and if the output is negative, then assign it to the other class. So the weights would be adjusted based on the error from the classification results, and this would go on in a repetitive manner where the weights are learned and relearned. This perceptron is the first real precursor of modern neural networks. And then came Adeline in 1960, which was used as a, which is similar to the perceptron, but used a continuous response value. That is, it didn't use a binary output like a 0 or 1 or -1 and +1. It used the continuous output to learn the weights of the to learn the weights that decide the output. So perceptrons and Adelines were employed to solve classification problems using decision lines, like in cases where the two classes were linearly separable. That is, it could be a decision line in a two-dimensional space, or a decision plane in a three-dimensional space, and decision hyperplanes in multi-dimensional spaces. So this is applicable for the problems where the two classes can be linearly separated. What happens when the classes are not linearly separatable? So Minsky and Papert, in their work in 1969, showed that a basic perceptron is not able to solve this problem, which is now called the XOR problem. So there is no way. I hope everyone can see my cursor here. Could you please confirm?
Yeah, cursor. I don't think.
Okay. Okay. Can you see a red line?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So as I said earlier, the perceptron and Adeline were able to separate classes if they had a linear decision boundary here. In terms of the XOR, where the decision boundary is actually curved, this particular machine would not work. So first they proved that it was theoretically impossible for the perceptron or the adenine to learn such a function, no matter how long you let it train. So at this time, it was enough to kill all the research on neural networks and usher in what is called the first AI winter. The winter snow began to melt when Geoff Hinton came up with the idea of backpropagation. So neural networks with additional layers of neurons would allow could learn nonlinear functions. And around the same time, it was shown that such networks had the ability to learn any function, a result known as the universal approximation theorem. So thus AI has been here for quite some time now, has seen many ups and downs, but what made it develop to the proportion as we see of today? Even in the healthcare industry, the buzz around the first AI-powered systems or applications of AI in medicine was around 1970, when Mycin was an early expert system that used a knowledge base of approximately 600 rules to identify bacteria causing severe infections such as bacteremia and meningitis, and to recommend antibiotics with the dosage adjusted according to the person's weight. The physician running the program would answer a series of yes or no questions, and the machine would come up with the perfect dosage. And then came Theranos, a company that was founded in 2003. They claim to have developed devices to automate and miniaturize blood tests using microscopic blood volumes for analysis on a machine called Edison. But in 2015, an FDA inspection resulted in multiple observed violations. So the company is now defunct. But now in 2016, after AI was applied to medical imaging and diagnosis, it has been a steady and, if not an exponential increase in the number of applications, especially in the medical imaging domain, that we see a rise in the number of applications that use artificial intelligence for diagnosis and other clinical applications. So the resulting AI spring, as everyone calls it, is the result of a number of factors. The first comes in the form of computational storage. So in the picture above, you can see what you see is a hard disk, which was 5 MB in size in 1956, cost approximately $3,200 for a month's lease, whereas now a Samsung 1 TB hard disk in 2020 costs less than $150, and it can be held in your hands comfort. Similarly, increase in computational power, where the first perceptron or the Mark I perceptron, as it is called, it uses a whole big room in the Smithsonian Museum now, where it rests, and consists of lots of wires and connections. Whereas you can see what the status as of now. It's a GPU made up of multiple graphical processing units that can perform several operations, computing operations in parallel. And especially since we are talking about deep learning and neural networks today, they are embarrassingly parallel, meaning that there are multiple, involving mathematical operations can be done in parallel. So the latest AI models today train lots of parameters to the tune of millions, example, GoogleNet. And there is also big data availability. So ImageNet is a well-known database which comes with 14 million annotated real-life images, having the images that belong to approximately 22,000 classes. Each meaningful concept or word is described by what is known as a synonym set, and this ImageNet has approximately 22,000 such synonym sets. And there are at least 1,000 images in each of these synonym sets. And within medicine, the computerization of medical records, now what we call as the electronic medical records, also has enabled us to be in this current AI spring. So before we move on to the applications, I just want to come up with the definitions, with a few definitions. So AI systems are powered by algorithms using techniques such as machine learning, deep learning, and rules. So machine learning algorithms use statistical techniques to enable these AI systems to learn from data and get progressively better at tasks without having to be specifically programmed to do so. And within machine learning, deep learning is a specific topic which uses multi-layered structures of algorithms called neural networks. And the design of the neural network is based on the structure of the human brain. Just as we use our brains to identify patterns and classify different types of information, neural networks can be taught to perform the same tasks on data. And there are different types of machine learning and deep learning. The first one is called supervised learning, wherein a teacher in this image knows what he wants to teach the child, in our case, the AI, and defines the expected answer, and the child learns to excel at the task. So in unsupervised learning, the teacher does not influence how the child learns to play, but observes the conclusions the child can draw from solving the task. In reinforcement learning, the teacher knows what he wants to teach to the child, but does not define the step-by-step procedure how the child should learn it. Instead, the teacher only gives feedback after the task is completed and asks the child to find out on their own self, based on the feedback, whether the strategy he used was optimal or not, based on the rewards that the teacher gave to the child. And in deep learning, it is possible to analyze vastly more complex data sets from images and videos to a sort of human reasoning. It is multi-layered and could mimic how neural networks work in the brain. And these type of machine learning techniques have been applied to several domains, including self-driving cars, language translation, facial recognition, recommendation engines, and whatnot. I want to bring up an example of applying healthcare, applying AI to healthcare. This graphic shows the stages in machine learning model development for medical image classification tasks. So the task here is to identify benign and malignant cancers or tumors. So for training, the machine learning algorithm uses a system of the machine learning system uses a set of input images to identify the properties that may affect the decision. That is like the intensity of the image, the edges of the image, texture, shape, etc. These are called features of the image that the machine learning algorithm uses to learn. And then these features are computed as feature vectors to be fed into the machine learning algorithm, and then the machine learning algorithm will learn from these features and learn the correct pattern of classification of the image, that is whether to depict it as a benign or malignant tumor, as compared with the supplied samples for these input images. And then when the prediction has to happen, the system has now learned all the supplied representation for all the supplied images and the corresponding labels. Now, when presented with new images, the learned model is applied to the new images to assist the radiologist in identifying the tumor type. So in traditional machine learning techniques, most of the applied features need to be identified by a domain expert in order to reduce the complexity of the data and make patterns more visible to learning algorithms to work. So on the other hand, deep learning tries to learn high-level features from the data in an incremental manner. So you don't have to specify the features upfront for a deep learning model. So you can kind of eliminate the need for domain expertise and hardcore feature extraction. Also, deep learning techniques tend to solve the problem end to end. For example, in this picture, the same deep learning approach could be used to identify the objects in this image. Like the algorithm will say that there is a dog, there is a cycle, and there is a car. Whereas for traditional machine learning, you will have to learn a classifier or an algorithm for identification of each of these labels. That is a dog, a separate classifier for a bicycle, a separate classifier for a car, and so on. So machine learning techniques need the problem statement to be broken down into different parts to be solved first, and then their results need to be combined at the final stage. So deep learning scores over machine learning when it is not clear how features need to be defined, like in the case of how malignant tumors need to be understood from images, which are likely to be missed by some of the radiologists. And the deep learning learns and optimizes on the features by itself. So why use AI in medicine? There are 3 reasons for using AI in medicine to improve the operational efficiency. For example, in using forecasting models in AI, it can be used to help determine the percentage of patients that may need ventilators in ICU. So also, with more and more imaging volume, radiologists are increasingly concerned about the critical case at the bottom of the list being overlooked. So this AI technology is not purporting to the diagnosis per se, but rather augmenting the radiologists. They just do what clinicians do, but faster and without fatigue, making them potentially useful in finding the proverbial needle in the haystack. Also, for the utilization of big data, because the big data in healthcare includes healthcare payer provider data such as electronic medical records, pharmacy prescriptions, insurance records, along with genomics driven experiments like genotyping, gene expression data, and other data acquired from hand devices like smartwatches and whatnot. Combining the data can greatly enhance our knowledge about the individual profile of a patient, an approach which is often called as individual or personalized or precision-based healthcare. Also, in unlocking new findings. The RNA massive sequencing allows analyzing the entire transcriptome or the messenger RNA molecules expressed by a person. It can even identify new expressions that are not yet understood by humans. For example, it has been studied in prostate cancer, and some of the expression levels that were not yet understood by humans were identified by the help of AI. So with that, I'll move on to the application areas in medicine. Right now, there are many areas in which AI is applied in medicine, including clinical decision support, robotic surgery, analysis of radiological images, and retina scans, mental health, wherein you analyze social media, the presence of the social media presence of the person and their personal device data to diagnose and monitor depression, in pathology, to analyze biopsy samples, in genetic analysis, then even in medical administration to schedule operating rooms and medical billing and insurance, and virtual nursing, wherein you can monitor the patients between hospital visits to alert clinicians if something goes wrong, and identify new biomarkers as in therapeutics. So I plan to talk on 4 application areas in medicine in more detail. The first is in diagnosis, is in the realm of diagnosis, Alzheimer's disease diagnosis to be specific. Alzheimer's disease is an irreversible neurodegenerative disorder that affects the cognitive health of elderly individuals. So Alzheimer's disease is impacted by factors such as lifestyle, diet, educational, demographic profiles of individuals. On the other hand, there are certain scores like psychometric scores and neuroimages that denote the cognitive status of the individual. So there are heterogeneous data sources, and they act as multifaceted representations of the same individual. So in one of the projects, we aim to combine these distinct data sources to get a better understanding of the subject's cognitive status or the patient's cognitive status. We tried to capture the actual meaning of the data and their relationships with the guidance of domain knowledge and the data itself. So domain knowledge as in the knowledge that comes from clinicians and other experts. And then we used suitable ML models to encode these rules of how to combine the various data sources, and then we used it to automatically predict relevant problems in Alzheimer's disease management, such as identifying the stage of the disease, the severity of the disease, and this helps clinicians to make better decisions with respect to treatments and interventions. So this is an area called predictive clinical analytics, where we are using patient data to make clinical decisions on early diagnosis, disease risks, and prognosis, etc. So different types of patient data is being collected, as I mentioned earlier, and each type of data represents a distinct perspective of the subject's clinical condition. So they relate to the disease in two main ways, either as an indicator, meaning that they indicate the presence of the condition, or as a contributor, in which they impact the disease as a protective or a risk factor. Generally, these occur prior to the disease. So, for example, there are certain indicators from neuroimages that kind of say that the person has disease, whereas background traits like genotype, the medical history, and behavioral patterns can say how prone or how risky they are to getting the disease. So the AI methodology that we used wanted to actually explore three types of dependencies. First one is a correlational dependency between the different variables in the that were collected. Variables meaning the different data that we collected, like MRI data, the behavioral data, and so on. This can be used to predict the clinical status. And then the other dependency that we were interested on was causation, that is between the background factors and the diseases. This can be used to identify the risky or protective factors that contribute to the disease. And then all of these different data sets hold unique knowledge in themselves. So that is called complementarity. In combination, we used data from the experts or the knowledge from the experts, as well as the knowledge that we gathered from the data, like from disease epidemiology, can classify protective and risky causal factors and variable correlations as is obtained from the data to learn these dependencies. So here comes the ML part. It is slightly tricky to understand this. Basically, we had a lot. I just want to put out the picture that we had a lot of data, and it is not often that in clinical in the area of medicine that we get a lot of patients with all these data available. So basically, we started with a step called a dimensionality reduction, wherein we kind of shrink the entire data set to identify few features that actually play an important role in identifying the disease status of the person. So in mathematical terms, if you have to say, we find low rank representations of these clinical data that comes from the patient, and based on the covariance pattern, we can learn whether they are whether two features are important or whether they are redundant. And then for including the expert knowledge, we used a tree-based hierarchy wherein we had 3 layers of knowledge representation, organizing into background features, the actual cognitive state, whether the person has dementia, the Alzheimer's disease, or is in a milder state of dementia, or is totally normal, and then the markers that come from MRI scans, PET scans, and so on. And we encoded rules in terms of how the nodes were connected. There are certain constraints, like there can be a node called a root, which cannot be the children of other nodes. Like there are certain contributors like age, gene, etc., gene status, etc., that cannot be the result of something else. Whereas the markers, like as I said, the MRI, the volume of a certain brain part can be the result of the disease. So the in Alzheimer's disease, it is most often found that the gray matter volume of certain brain areas tend to reduce or atrophy as the disease progresses. So that's the result of the disease. So we mentioned specific rules to encode these into a hierarchical machine learning algorithm. And this is the network that we found, or that was that came as the result of this process. And we found that the major features identified by the algorithm, like as you see here, the yellow colored nodes here are the genetic factors that contribute to the disease. These were identified to be actually studied upon and have established effects on the presence of Alzheimer's disease. Then age, gender, and education status also affect the Alzheimer's disease. And these two, for example, are gray matter volumes of certain brain areas. They were also found to be really significant in the presence of Alzheimer's disease. So the prediction of the clinical status using this structure was found to greatly improve the results in identifying the patients at different stages of the disease. The next example that I want to introduce is the use of AI in clinical trials. So bringing a drug to the market is a long and arduous process. Studies estimate that the clinical trial process, where new drugs are tested on patients before the FDA in the US, or the Food and Drug Administration in the US approves them, lasts 9 years and costs around 1.3 billion on an average. Clinical trials are conducted in multiple phases, like you have the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, each increasing in cost and complexity. So despite the time and capital investment in trials, only 1 out of 10 drugs that enter phase 1 of a clinical trial will be approved by the FDA finally. So there are various reasons why clinical trials fail, including failure to recruit enough trial participants, mid-trial patient dropout, side effects, and inconsistent data. So once the patients enroll in a study, they receive the experimental study drug called the placebo, and patients go home with the first course of medication, and for example, a 30-day pill bottle with the instructions on dosage and a diary to fill out daily how they were taking the medicine and so on. And the patients are asked to note when they took the drug, what other medications were taken on those days, and adverse reactions. So in this study by Horn et al., a 12-month parallel group controlled trial, clinical trial, was performed in adult patients in a particular cardiology clinic. The inclusion criteria included an indication for statins, meaning they were the patients included were taking statin as one of their medicines, and there was a separate control group which which was tested. There were two groups of patients. One was tested for medication adherence using something called reminders or nudges, and the other study group or the controls were not given these kind of reminders, and they wanted to basically see how far the patients enrolled in these two different groups adhered to their medication. So the study informatician accessed the prescription data such as medication name, date of filling of a prescription, the refill frequency of refilling, and number of pills for each of the claim when they were claiming the insurance. And these reminders or nudges were developed with a personalization in mind, like nudge personalization was performed using data from the person's psychographic profile, social determinants of health, and other baseline demographics. And the psychographic profile surveyed the subject's beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, and preferences. So this personalization of nudge was intended to provide a greater level of positive and meaningful contact to achieve the intended effect and to limit the concerns and alert fatigue a contact may induce. So the ML part of this clinical trial was that it was coded as a reinforcement learning problem, wherein the patient is the agent, and based on the nudges that is given to the patient, whether the patient adhered to taking the medicine or not, they were rewarded. So the adherence barriers were identified as, or the problems the individuals faced in adhering to the medication pattern were identified as analysis, were analyzed as certain clusters of individuals who had similarity in their either psychographic profile or their different types of beliefs and their some other differences, and the clusters are distinguished by the differences in patient motivation and ability values. So the nudges were personalized in content, in frequency, timing, the delivery modality, and a feedback metric. And there were two types of nudges. In case of primary nudges, they were just like asking the patient to set up a routine, or secondary nudges come in the form of reminders, like at multiple times in a week, and so on. And they were sent through two-way communication, either through emails, text messages, or phone calls. And the study found that the proportion of days covered for the medication or the statin was improved by nudges when compared to the control arm over the 12-month time point, especially at the 3-month mark. A rise in the number of days of medication adherence in both groups was notably different, likely due to the nudging of that was provided by this particular ML system. So the end result was an absolute 10.3% higher adherence in the favor of nudges. Moving on to the next example, AI has been used successfully in radiology to identify tumors from images. In our group, we used it to better radiology education. For example, there are certain liver malignancies that are really difficult to identify from abdominal CT. It is a very challenging task because the surrounding tissue, the tissue that surrounds the malignancies, is also almost similar in appearance, and they have to be kind of differentiated. So we expected to see that as the CT dose increased, the resulting image gets better, and then the radiologists are able to identify the malignancies in a much more efficient manner. But what we saw that is that it is very random. So increasing the dose does not really affect the performance, at least to some extent. So there are certain explanations why the radiologist, why there are limitations in the radiologist reading capability. And we wanted to investigate what they were. Like, there were certain specific radiologists who were missing some of the liver malignancies, and many of them, sometimes many of them were missing the liver malignancies, sometimes only few of them were missing the liver malignancies. So we used two different types of features. One from what is called as radiomix, basically the different descriptors of the image, like the shape, the intensity of the pixel values from the image, the texture of the image, as well as deep convolutional neural networks based features to identify the malignancies that are missed by majority of the radiologists. And these predictions may help in radiology education for targeted and generalized training. So we acquired CT scans, and they were all of these CT scans were annotated by a reference reader who kind of identified where in the image the actual lesions were. And then we recruited around 10 radiologists to kind of mark these lesions on their own. And these were fed into the machine learning algorithms with specific annotations, meaning that they were annotated as detected if the corresponding radiologist could detect the malignancy from the CT image, and as missed if more than 80% of the radiologists couldn't detect the lesion or the malignancy. So we used a deep learning model, which was pre-trained on the images from real life, that is the ImageNet domain, and we used it to train the target image domain of the CT images of liver data. And we found that across the different types of features that we analyzed, the CNNs were, or the deep learning based features were superior, and that it could identify the exact point, like in this is the CT image, the original CT image of a liver malignancy, and these are the results of each of the readers who participate, or radiologists who participated in the trial when they were asked to read the images. So if the corresponding radiologist would miss a lesion, the CNN or the deep learning algorithm could not exactly locate where in the image the lesion was. And in cases where the radiologist could detect the lesion, the CNN also could localize the location of the lesion. So these images are called heat maps, and these heat maps are kind of evidence that the CNNs are actually learning what we intended them to learn. And then there are examples from new natural language processing, wherein from clinical notes, you can extract meaningful information or concepts relating to a specific disease, like, for example, peripheral arterial disease in this particular work, and use it to classify whether a patient has the disease or not, in spite of not having the doctor's, the clinician's diagnosis. Such an example of an NLP model being applied to clinical notes could identify the patients with that particular disease much better than the number of cases detected by the gold standard, which is kind of the standard that is used in clinical practice. So in clinical practice, the application of AI has been few, and particularly because there are a lot of regulations and approvals by the FDA that has to happen. I can give a few examples of its application in clinical practice. For example, the FDA approved a smartphone case to track ECG in 2012, which was later transformed to the size of a credit card. And later in 2017, they were already using deep learning networks, and the FDA cleared an ECG reader called Cardiaband as a medical device accessory to Apple Watch. And a study concluded that the device managed to distinguish between atrial fibrillation and a normal heart rhythm with a sensitivity of 93%. So it has a very high performance. So there are some of the challenges in implementation of AI in healthcare. Firstly, explainability. So medical professionals tend to make decisions using data that were obtained with technologies they understand, or understand basics enough to trust it. So in the case of AI, sometimes it is not possible because millions of learned parameters are needed to determine the output of a neural network. So thus explainability is a key issue when providing insights to clinicians. And then augmented intelligence. So AI the role of AI is more of an assistive role to the physician and not looking to replace the human intelligence. So it also refers to the value an AI can provide that comes from how we can combine the unique capabilities of human experts with those of AI to provide better care. And then AI feeds on data. So the quality and the quantity of data is really important. Also, there are privacy issues, like when medical AI needs to access the medical records, data from health sensors, medical algorithms. A lot of information needs to be anonymized in order to protect the individual person's privacy. And then there comes legal issues when a deep learning algorithm misses a diagnosis, or a doctor or something really bad happens from an autonomous surgical robot when it injures a patient during procedures and so on. Then there is a whole new realm of trust, and we'll need a lot of time to trust an autonomous car. So we'll take even more time for patients and medical professionals to trust AI as well with the medical diagnosis. And finally, we have something called as biased AI. So a study concluded that commercial companies' face recognition systems were more accurate on light-skinned people. Those systems actually produced inaccurate results when in identifying people or recognizing people of color. That is, they were not light-skinned. And also in Amazon's HR department, when they were using AI-based machine learning tool to sort out the best job applicants, it was primarily favoring men over women. So these are examples of bias in AI, and these challenges have to be kind of overcome when implementing AI in practice. So what should be the key to using AI should be by the FAIR principle. It means that the data should be findable, and all the supplementary materials and the descriptive metadata as well as unique should have persistent identifiers like digital object identifier, and it needs to be accessible. So it should be understandable to both humans and machines, and data should be stored in a trusted repository. It should be interoperable, meaning that the metadata and the data itself should use a formal, accessible, shared, and broadly applicable language for knowledge representation. based on a set of agreed upon vocabularies, and it needs to be reusable. So data and collections should have a clear usage license and provide accurate information on the when it needs to be used again. So by that, the future of AI in medicine is very bright because but it should be regulated and efficient and backed by evidence. The US FDA launched a branch of digital health in 2019 and has attempted at designing new regulatory standards for AI-based technologies. And in the era of AI, there are more algorithms which will become available than medical devices, and there is a shift from hardware to software. So this new regulatory framework, if successfully implemented into medical practice, can, as I mentioned before, augment the intelligence of a physician. So one of the potential obstacles in adoption can be a common fear among the medical professionals that AI will replace them. While highly repetitive and database professions or rather tasks under those professions will probably be impacted by automation, the core medical profession is and still will be the human touch, empathy and compassionate care that it is almost impossible to mimic through a programming language. However, as a general rule of thumb, we might be able to assume that those medical professionals who use AI will replace those who do not so. That is how such profound role AI will have in the future of medicine, that it will in the future probably come to be known as having the same importance as the physician's stethoscope. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and we can now open the floor for question and answers. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Parvati, for the highly informative and lucid presentation. Now, before moving on to the question and answer session, we have the keynote address by the Chairman of the Computer Engineering Division Board, Mr. Amit Kumar Dasji. He is with us. So may I, and the participants may kindly post their queries in the Q&A box. You can see the Q&A box there. You can post your queries there, and Dr. Parvati will respond to these queries after the keynote address by the Chairman of the Computer Engineering Division, Amit Kumar Dasji. Warm welcome to you, Amit Kumar Dasji, and request you to deliver the
Thank
keynote.
you so much.
Sir,
Thank you so much.
May I stop sharing the presentation?
Yes, yes, yes.
Please.
Thank you.
So, good evening, all of you. And it was a very, very nice presentation, Dr. Pillai. I'm sorry that I joined a bit late because I was traveling. So when I joined, from there on, it was such an invigorating session that, I could not take it off. I was just stand still there. So thank you so much. You explained the concept very well, and you summed up very well that human touch will be there, but at the same time, the doctors will have the technology at their disposal to rightly diagnose as much as possible and give a personalized touch. So that is a wonderful thing. Coming from a period where we used to hear that doctors only sees the nadi and then prescribe. From there we have come to a stage that okay, you get the blood samples, and then that was a personalized. Okay, so slowly personalization has happened, and now it is a digital transformation. So data driven. So thank you so much, and I really am thankful that the Kochi Center has organized such a wonderful and getting this international faculty here. It's really a blessing for us. I am sure all of you have enjoyed, and I won't wait for the audience to pose their questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit Kumar Dasji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. and welcome. Thank you.
Now we move on to the question answer session. I think the question and the QA box, I don't find any question. Sorry, yes, just see. Yeah, there are a few questions here. I think you can, Dr. Parvati, you can see these questions in the Q&A box, no?
Yes, I can see the question. So I'll go through them one by one.
Yeah.
So the first question is from Sudhakar Reddy. So he asks, is the image process and augmented reality study same? I'm not sure that I understand his question fully, but as I see it, image processing at least in the medical domain is for betterment of the quality of the, say for example, the MRI images or CT images. So when the image comes out from the scanners, they are not really in a very good readable format. It needs to be reconstructed using multiple algorithms, not necessarily machine learning algorithms, but there are already pre-built. Now, some of the scanners even have pre-built image processing algorithms that process these images that comes out from the scanners and present it to the radiologist. And I guess augmented reality is something totally different, like wherein you can exist as an avatar of yourself. So that is what I feel about augmented reality is. So they are, I guess, maybe image processing is used in augmented reality, but they are not really the same. So the next question is from Sudeep. Can you explain NLP use case of AI in medicine with an example? So that was like the last use case that I presented. I didn't have enough time to go through it. So there are several examples of the use of AI, particularly NLP, to read from clinicians' notes that come with the electronic health records. Like they find keywords that are found most common with the diseases description, like say in the case of the disease that I presented, which is like an increased blood pressure in the arms and the ankles. They look for keywords like pressure, or the systolic blood pressure is more, and things like that. So there are certain keywords that the NLP the NLP algorithm can track, and based on the presence of these words in these clinical notes, they can classify the patient as having the disease or not having the disease, and so on. The next question is about what is the minimum required data set for ML and deep learning? For example, the minimum number of radiological images required for tumor detection through ML and DL. Okay, so it again depends on what kind of data. This is, this is not just related to problems of machine learning and deep learning in the area of healthcare alone, but it's a general problem that given more the more data, of course the algorithms tend to perform well, but it's not just the quantity of data that matters, but the quality of data that you feed into the algorithm. So if you feed bad data, the algorithm is going to output only bad results. So as a rule of thumb, it used to be said that the number of features that the machine learning algorithm needs has to be at least n divided by 10, or n meaning the number of samples that you have, and the number of features should be at least reduced by a factor of 10. So if you have 100 patients per se, you can learn only with meaningful results only with, let's say, 10 features that you can access from these medical records or whatever other data sources you want to learn from. And especially in the case of deep learning, when the algorithm needs to find these features by itself, more data is better. So at least, and again, it depends on the problem that you are solving, and there are techniques to kind of add on to the data, including processes like data augmentation, where you can slightly rotate the image, do some translations to the image so that the same image can be used maybe more than once with following some image transformations. So as you have data, the more data you have, the better, but along with the data quantity, the quality of the data is also very important. Okay. And the next question that I have is what is the most recommended programming language for machine learning and deep learning for medical data processing? And I mean, many of the medical data practitioners or medical data computer scientists who work with medical data are especially adept at MATLAB. At least from my experience, that is what I have felt. But then the support for deep learning in MATLAB is good, but then the availability of the software, MATLAB is not a free software. It comes with a price. It can only be bought. But I am very partial to Python because of the ease of implementation and the ease of understanding and learning the language, with a lot of free library, free coding packages available online. So I would ask to go for Python because there are a lot of already existing algorithms that have been implemented in Python. The last question that I have here is the data is given, the data given is labeled or categorized or in clusters in neural network. So again, neural networks are a very generic term. They can be used for both supervised and unsupervised learning, meaning that if they are used for supervised learning, the data that is given to the neural network needs to be labeled or categorized as or annotated as the specific image that you are feeding into the neural network has the tumor or does not have the tumor at this particular location. But when it is used for something like, let's say, reducing the noise of the image, noise in the image, it goes into another realm of machine learning called unsupervised learning, wherein you learn from your own mistakes. So there is no supervision here. It's just unsupervised learning in neural networks. So the neural networks can be used for multiple types of machine learning. So I guess I have answered all the questions.
Dr. Pillai, this is Amit Das here.
Yeah.
May I ask a question, please?
Sure.
This question is not anything related to technical. I know that you have answered well. My question is, now since in US these things are already getting embraced, do you envisage any ethical issues coming up?
Yes, of course. There is already
how do we tackle those things?
Yeah, there is already a well-established kind of arm of study that focuses on the legal issues that comes with the application of AI. Then there is bias, which like it's not my research area, but I can share my 2 cents on what I know about it. So like in case of legalities, right, if the AI kind of misdiagnosis, then the clinician who actually wants to embrace the AI should take the responsibility if the AI misdiagnosis, as well as like in one of the last slides of my presentation, I touched upon something called as AI bias, wherein the AI that learned from these medical records, like in one of the cases where the tumors had to be identified from the CT images, the AI was learning. The AI was presented with these images, and before presenting these images, the set of the images were kind of looked after or viewed by a clinician before giving it to the AI, and he had unknowingly made certain marks, or knowingly or unknowingly, I am not really sure of. There were certain marks made by the physician, and the AI was actually learning that those images which have these marks are the ones that have the disease, and not they were not the AI was basically not learning from the image, but not learning what the practitioner wanted it to learn from the image, but learning some really unimportant stuff. Like, so there are always these cases, but there is research that is happening to kind of remove this bias from the AI. Like, basically you learn a bias system, and you have methods now to subtract that bias from the results of the AI system.
Yeah, thank you so much. Plus, I think some regulations should also come up so that it is not misused by insurance companies and even hospitals. Maybe hospital knows that this is not this case is already gone case, so they may not even admit the patient, because they know that possibly there is no chance of recovery, maybe he or she will die. So these are some ethical issues probably which has to be, legal framework also has to be.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much.
I think,
thank you very much.
Yes, I think there are no more questions in the Q&A box. So I think it's time to wind up this webinar held under the aegis of the Computer Engineering Division and organized by the IEI Kochi Local Center. So thank you very much, Dr. Parvati, once again for making an excellent presentation and also for responding very effectively to the queries made by the participants. Now, thank you very much. Now over to the chairman of Kochi Local Center, Engineer P.A. Salahuddin.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, Amit Kumar Saab, for your honorable presence. And now we are really happy, and we had a very good knowledge sharing event for our people. And of course, it is a pan-India program right now. A lot of people from other states and areas are participated, and are really happy, and we are really thankful to you, ma'am. And I request you to be with us in our office when you are visiting your mother country. So we are very happy to receive you and honor you. Thank you very much. Now I am handing over mic to our Honorary Secretary to extend thanks. Thank you. Sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Good evening and good morning to Dr. Parvati S. Pillai. And today we arranged a webinar on application of machine learning and artificial intelligence in medicine, which was organized by Institute of Engineers India Kochi Local Center with full support of IEA headquarters and under the aegis of Computer Engineering Division. This presentation was very informative and knowledgeable, and our faculty member Dr. S. Pillai explained very well what is artificial intelligence, what is machine learning, and it is a evolution of this one. What are the applications, what are the challenges, and what are the future of this one. I think it was very useful to all who attended this one, all students and working people, and those who are working in research, etc. And in this occasion, my duty is to express word of thanks and our chairman, Computer Engineering Division, Mr. Amit Kumar Das is present here, and he given an encouraging speech for this this webinar, and full support was given to us. And with his support only, we could arrange this one under the aegis of this division. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much on behalf of IEA and IEA Kochi Local Center, and on behalf of all participants. And next, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to Dr. H.O. Thakare, who is leading the Institute of Engineers now, and with his full support, we arrange this organization. And on behalf of Institute of Engineers and all participants and all members, I extend word of thanks to him. Sir, please accept. And Dr. G. Ranganath was this chairman, Committee for Advancement of Technology and Engineering, was very helpful in arranging this seminar. And in this occasion, I would like to extend word of thanks to Dr. G. Ranganath. Next, our faculty and Dr. Parvati S. Pillai, Research Fellow at Mayo Clinic, Rochester, USA. And this subject was presented very well and was very interesting. And in this occasion, on behalf of Institute of Engineers India and Institute of Engineers India Kochi Local Center, and on behalf of all participants, I express sincere word of thanks to you, madam. Please accept it. And next, this take all leadership in arranging this one by our chairman, Engineer P.A. Salahuddin sir, and I extend word of thanks on behalf of all of us to him. And our moderator was in this section was Dr. G. Madhu, our senior professor and head of Chemical Engineering Division, KUSAT, and he is our technical committee convener, and he is very interesting and keenly taking all things interested to him. And he is also our state committee member also, and he is very sincere in all the works entrusted to him. I extend my thanks to you, sir, on behalf of Institute of Engineers India and Kochi Local Center, and with all participants here. And I extend my sincere thanks to Mr. Sudeep Chakravarti, and this technical director of this institution, and who given full support and cooperation in arranging this webinar. And I extend thanks on behalf of Institute of Engineers India and all participants here. Next, I extend thanks to all.
Your mic is muted.
Muted.
Okay.
Okay.
All council members, state committee members, and all other members present here. And also I extend my thanks to all participants, all students, all dear friends. Thanks once again to all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Parvati. Thank you, Professor Madhu. And congratulations to Kochi team for arranging such a lovely talk. And please, Dr. Pillai, please do sometimes grace and enlighten us again. Thank you.
Thank you,
We'll be
sir.
happy
Thank
to
you.
do
Thank
so.
you very
Thank
much.
you.
It could be a small meeting or a webinar within the limit of our own, division or for local center participants. Because due to the intervention of Dr. Mr. Amit Kumar ji, it is become a pan-India, and a lot of people are enjoy, or a lot of people are able to understand what is what and the modern technology in the field of medical science. I'm really thankful to sir for allowing us to do this. Thank you very much for Amit Kumar ji. Thank you, sir. And now we are come to the last stage. It is nothing but auto thanks also over. Now it said normally there is a presentation of Commando. Unfortunately, you are in US and we are here. We are unable to do anything right now. So I request you to be with us when your next visit to India. Kindly accept our invitation and please come. We will make some program, and of course we will honor you. We will do it, and of course we want this sort of program again and again. And of course, I know that as long as Madhu sir is with us, there is no problem. We will contact you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You, sir. Thank you for such kind words. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We can call it as this. This
Okay.
is.
Thank you, sir. With permission of the chair, can I end the webinar?
Yeah, please.
Sir, please, Sudhir Babu, please end this webinar. Thank you so much. It was lovely session. Thank you.